Commander Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of a UES Valiant, watching the endless expanse of space through the reinforced viewport. The stars looked different out here in the Kepler sector, colder somehow, more distant. It had been 3 months since humanity's first contact with alien civilization, and the euphoria of that moment still lingered in the crew's conversations during off-duty hours. The discovery had changed everything. After centuries of wondering if they were alone in the universe, humanity finally had its answer. The Zephyrian Coalition had made first contact through a carefully orchestrated series of radio transmissions, followed by a formal diplomatic meeting near the edge of human space. They were peaceful traders, they claimed, representatives of a vast network of civilized species that spanned multiple star systems. Sarah remembered the celebration back on Earth when the news broke. Streets filled with people, governments declaring holidays, scientists weeping with joy on live broadcasts. Humanity was no longer alone. They had been invited to join something greater than themselves, a galactic community of enlightened beings who had moved beyond war and conflict. The Zephyrians were elegant creatures, tall and slender, with crystalline formations growing from their elongated skulls. Their ships were works of art, flowing curves of biometal that seemed to pulse with inner light. When they spoke through their translation devices, their voices carried a musical quality that made even harsh diplomatic negotiations sound like poetry. "Commander," called Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communication station. "We're receiving a transmission. It's on the emergency frequency." Sarah turned from the viewport, her expression immediately shifting to alert professionalism. "Put it through, Lieutenant." The bridge speakers crackled to life, and the familiar harmonic tones of Zephyrian speech filled the air. But something was wrong. The usual melodic quality was strained, broken by what sounded like static interference. As the universal translator processed the signal, the words that emerged sent a chill down Sarah's spine. "This is Trade Vessel Harmony's dawn to any human vessels in range. We are under attack. Unknown hostile forces have engaged our convoy. We require immediate assistance. Repeat, this is an emergency distress call. Please respond." Sarah felt her blood run cold. The Zephyrians had told them that warfare was a thing of the past in their corner of the galaxy, that the Coalition had achieved lasting peace through diplomacy and mutual understanding. Yet here was one of their vessels calling for military assistance. "Rodriguez, triangulate that signal. How far out are they?" "Working on it, Commander." Rodriguez's fingers flew across his console. "Signal's weak, but got it. Approximately 14 hours at maximum burn." Sarah turned to her tactical officer. "Stevens, what's our current complement?" "We've got the Valiant, plus the destroyers Morrison and Blackwood in our patrol group. The heavy cruiser Defiant is roughly 6 hours behind us, and there are 3 more vessels in the extended fleet scattered across this sector." It wasn't much of a fleet by human standards, but it was what they had. The Zephyrians had assured them that this region of space was perfectly safe, that military escorts were unnecessary for their joint exploration missions. Now that assumption was being tested. "Set course for the distress signal, maximum burn. Signal the Morrison and Blackwood to form up on us. And give me a priority channel to Fleet Command." The next few minutes were a blur of activity as the 3 human ships adjusted course and began their race toward the unknown. Sarah found herself pacing the bridge, a habit she developed during her years commanding merchant vessels before joining the Exploration Corps. The response from Fleet Command came through 20 minutes later. Admiral Harrison's weathered face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim. "Commander Chun, I've received your report. This is unexpected. That's putting it mildly, sir. The Zephyrians specifically told us that armed conflict was extinct in Coalition space. Either they lied to us, or something has changed dramatically." Harrison nodded slowly. "I've been in contact with the Zephyrian embassy on Luna Station. They claim to be as surprised as we are. According to their records, there haven't been any hostile actions in this region for over 50 years. Could this be some kind of test, sir? A way to evaluate our military capabilities?" "It's possible, but if so, it's a dangerous game they're playing. You're authorized to render assistance, Commander, but proceed with extreme caution. We don't know what we're walking into. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and the steady hum of the ship's engines as they pushed toward maximum velocity. She'd always prided herself on her ability to read situations, to understand the motivations of the people she dealt with. But first contact protocols had no precedent for this kind of scenario. Hours passed in tense anticipation. The crew performed their duties with professional efficiency, but Sarah could sense the underlying tension. Everyone knew this could be humanity's first real test on the galactic stage. "Commander," Stevens called out suddenly. "We're picking up debris on long-range sensors. Looks like ship fragments." Sarah's heart sank. "How much debris?" "Significant amount, ma'am. Multiple vessels. And, Commander, some of it looks human." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Human debris meant human casualties. But what were human ships doing out here? As far as she knew, only the Zephyrian vessels were supposed to be in this region. "Give me everything you can on those debris signatures. I want to know what ships we're looking at." The next hour revealed a horrifying picture. Mixed among the twisted remains of Zephyrian biometal ships were the unmistakable hull plates of human vessels. Not exploration ships or trade vessels, but military craft. Someone had been expecting trouble. "Commander," Rodriguez's voice was tight with tension. "I'm picking up a new transmission. It's human. Put it through." This time, the voice that emerged from the speakers was unmistakably human, speaking English with a slight accent Sarah couldn't place. "This is Captain Morrison of the UES Phoenix. Warning to all human vessels. The Zephyrians are not what they claim to be. Repeat, do not trust the Zephyrians. They led us into a trap. They're working with..." The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by empty static. Sarah stared at the communications console, her mind racing. Captain Morrison? She knew that name from the fleet rosters, but Morrison was supposed to be leading a diplomatic mission in a completely different sector. What is he doing here? "Stevens, any sign of the Phoenix on sensors?" "Negative, Commander. If she's out there, she's either powered down or gone." The implications were staggering. If the Zephyrians had somehow betrayed the Phoenix and her crew, if they had led human ships into some kind of ambush, then everything humanity thought they knew about first contact was wrong. "Commander," Rodriguez called out again. "I'm receiving another Zephyrian distress signal. This one's much clearer." The musical tones of Zephyrian speech filled the bridge once more, but now Sarah heard something different in them. Where before she had heard panic and desperation, now she detected something that sounded almost like satisfaction. "Trade vessel Morning's Glory to Human Rescue Fleet. We are located at coordinates 77 Mark 42. We have sustained damage, but are stable. Please approach with all possible speed." Sarah felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. Something about this second transmission felt wrong. The tone was too controlled, too precise for a ship that had supposedly been under attack. "Stevens, how far are we from those coordinates?" 2 hours, Commander." Sarah made her decision. "Change course. Take us to the debris field first. I want to see what happened here before we respond to any more distress calls." "Ma'am, if the Zephyrians are genuinely in distress, then they can wait another hour while we investigate." "Something's not right here, Stevens. That warning from Captain Morrison, we need to know what we're walking into." The Valiant and her escort vessels adjusted course toward the debris field. As they drew closer, the scope of the destruction became apparent. Sarah had seen battlefield aftermath before, but this was different. The debris patterns suggested not a running battle, but an ambush. Ships caught completely off guard and destroyed before they could mount any meaningful defense. "Commander," the science officer called out from his station. "I'm reading something unusual about the weapon signatures on this debris." "What kind of unusual?" "The damage patterns don't match known Zephyrian technology. These ships were destroyed by high-energy plasma weapons with a distinctive frequency modulation. I've never seen anything like it in our database." Sarah felt the pieces of a horrible puzzle beginning to come together. The Zephyrians claimed to be peaceful traders, but they had somehow ended up in the middle of a battlefield. Human ships that weren't supposed to be in this sector had been destroyed alongside Zephyrian vessels. And now, there were weapons signatures that didn't match any known technology. Rodriguez tried to raise any survivors in the debris field, broadcast on all human emergency frequencies. For several minutes, there was only silence. Then, weak and crackling with interference, a voice emerged from the static. "This is Ensign Parker, UES Defiance. Is someone out there?" Sarah leaned forward. The Defiance had been part of Captain Morrison's diplomatic mission. "This is Commander Chun of the UES Valiant. Parker, what's your status?" "Commander, thank God. We've been drifting in this wreck for 6 hours. The ship's gone, but our emergency pod is still functional. Ma'am, you need to know, the Zephyrians set us up. They led us into an ambush. Can you tell me what happened?" "We were following a Zephyrian trade convoy, just like we'd done a dozen times before. Everything seemed normal until we reached this system. Then, ships started appearing out of nowhere. Big ones, Commander. Nothing like anything in our databases. They tore through the Zephyrian vessels first, then came after us." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Are you saying the Zephyrians were victims too?" "That's what we thought at first, ma'am. But then, Commander, the attacking ships, they were communicating with the Zephyrian vessels before they opened fire. It wasn't a battle, it was an execution, and the Zephyrians were giving them targeting data on our ships." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. Sarah felt the foundation of everything she believed about humanity's place in the galaxy crumble beneath her feet. "Parker, are you certain about this?" "Positive, Commander. Captain Morrison recorded everything before the end. The Zephyrians have been feeding information about human fleet movements to someone else. Someone with technology that makes ours look like toys." Sarah closed her eyes, trying to process the implications. Humanity had been so eager to join the galactic community that they had ignored every basic precaution. They had shared fleet deployments, technological specifications, even the locations of human colonies with their new Zephyrian friends. If Parker was right, they had handed their enemies everything they needed to destroy humanity. "Commander," Stevens interrupted her thoughts. "We're receiving another transmission from the Zephyrian vessel. They're demanding to know why we changed course." Sarah opened her eyes, feeling a cold fury building inside her. "Put them through." The musical tones of Zephyrian speech filled the bridge, and the translator converted them into words dripping with barely concealed impatience. "Human vessels, why have you deviated from your course? We are in urgent need of assistance. Every moment you delay puts our crew at greater risk." Sarah keyed the transmitter, her voice steady and controlled. "Trade Vessel Morning's Glory. This is Commander Chun. We are investigating debris in this area before proceeding to your location. Please maintain your current position." There was a pause before the response came, and when it did, Sarah detected something new in the tone, something that sounded like barely controlled anger. "Commander Chun, our situation is critical. We do not have time for you to investigate debris. You will proceed to our coordinates immediately." It wasn't a request. It was an order. Sarah felt her suspicions crystallize into certainty. "Stevens," she said quietly, "prepare for combat. Full tactical alert, but keep it quiet. No active sensors yet." Stevens nodded and began keying commands into his console. Throughout the bridge, status lights changed from green to yellow as weapon systems powered up and shields prepared for activation. Rodriguez signaled to Morrison and Blackwood, silent running protocols. "I want them ready for anything." As her ships prepared for what might be humanity's first real battle among the stars, Sarah found herself thinking about all the celebrations back on Earth, all the hopes and dreams that had been invested in this moment of first contact. Humanity had reached for the stars with open hands, eager to embrace the universe and their new place in it. Now it seemed the universe was reaching back, but with claws extended and teeth bared. The triumph of first contact was about to become something else entirely. "Commander," the science officer called out softly, "I'm picking up energy signatures near the Zephyrian vessel's coordinates. Multiple contacts previously hidden." Sarah nodded grimly. The trap was closing. But this time, humanity wouldn't go quietly into the dark. Whatever was waiting for them out there, whatever the Zephyrians had led them into, they would face it with their eyes open and their weapons ready. The age of innocence was over. The real test was about to begin. The rescue pod containing Ensign Parker was secured in the Valiant's shuttle bay within 30 minutes. Sarah met the young officer in the medical bay, where Dr. Martinez was treating him for radiation exposure and dehydration. Parker was barely 25, with short-cropped brown hair and eyes that had seen too much for someone his age. "Tell me everything, Ensign," Sarah said as she pulled up a chair beside his medical bed. Parker's hands shook slightly as he accepted a cup of water. "It started 3 days ago, Commander. Captain Morrison received updated orders from Fleet Command. We were told to escort a Zephyrian trade convoy through this sector as part of the cultural exchange program." Sarah nodded. She remembered similar orders from her own missions. The Zephyrians had been eager to show human vessels the safer trade routes through their territory, claiming it would help build trust between their species. The convoy consisted of 5 Zephyrian vessels, Parker continued. All of them claimed to be carrying rare minerals from the Outer Rim colonies. Everything seemed normal for the first 2 days. The Zephyrian captain, someone called Harmony Singer, was very friendly. He invited Captain Morrison over for dinner, gave him a tour of their ship. What changed? On the 3rd day, we reached this system. Harmony Singer said they needed to make a brief stop to recalibrate their navigation systems. Something about gravitational interference from the local star. Captain Morrison didn't think anything of it. We'd stopped before for similar reasons. Parker paused, taking another sip of water. His hands were steadier now, but Sarah could see the haunted look in his eyes that came from watching friends die. "That's when the attack began?" "Not immediately. We waited in orbit around the 4th planet for about 6 hours. Then, Harmony Singer contacted us again, said they were ready to proceed. But, as we began to leave the system, ships started decloaking all around us." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. Cloaking technology was something humanity had only dreamed about. The fact that these mysterious attackers possessed it put them at an enormous tactical advantage. How many ships? At least 20, maybe more. They were massive, Commander. Each one easily 3 times the size of our heavy cruisers. Black as space, with these strange energy patterns running along their hulls. I'd never seen anything like them. "And you're certain the Zephyrians were working with them?" Parker's expression hardened. "Absolutely certain. Before the attack began, I was monitoring communications. The Zephyrian vessels were transmitting detailed tactical data about our ships. Shield frequencies, weapon placements, crew complements. Everything." Sarah felt sick. The cultural exchange program had involved extensive sharing of technical specifications. The Zephyrians had claimed they needed to understand human technology to ensure compatibility with their own systems. Humanity had been so eager to demonstrate trust that they had essentially handed over the blueprints to their own destruction. What happened to the Phoenix? Captain Morrison tried to fight. The moment he realized what was happening, he ordered all ships to battle stations. "But, Commander, their weapons, our shields might as well have been paper. They cut through the Defiance like it wasn't even there." The Morrison and the Intrepid lasted maybe 5 minutes longer. Parker's voice cracked slightly. Captain Morrison managed to transmit a warning before the Phoenix was destroyed. He told me to get to the emergency pod and make sure someone learned the truth about the Zephyrians. Sarah placed a reassuring hand on the young man's shoulder. "You did well, Ensign. Your captain would be proud." She stood up, her mind already racing through tactical possibilities. If Parker's account was accurate, humanity was facing an enemy with superior technology and detailed knowledge of human capabilities. Worse, they had an ally already embedded within human space, feeding them intelligence and luring human ships into carefully prepared traps. "Dr. Martinez, I need Ensign Parker ready for duty as soon as possible. We're going to need everyone we can get." The doctor nodded. "He should be fine in a few hours, Commander. Just needs rest and fluids." Sarah made her way back to the bridge, where her officers were maintaining their silent watch on the mysterious energy signatures near the Zephyrian coordinates. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up as she entered. "Commander, the Zephyrians are getting more insistent. They've transmitted 17 requests for immediate assistance in the last 20 minutes. Any change in the energy signatures?" Stevens shook his head. "They're still there, but they're not moving. Whatever those ships are, they're waiting for something." Sarah settled into her command chair, considering her options. Every instinct told her that proceeding to the Zephyrian coordinates would be suicide. But if she simply fled, the enemy would know that their deception had been discovered. They might accelerate whatever larger plan they were working toward. "Rodriguez, send a response to the Zephyrian vessel. Tell them we've encountered some technical difficulties with our navigation systems, and we'll need another hour to resolve them." "Aye, Commander." Sarah keyed her communications console to the command frequency. "Morrison, Blackwood, this is Valiant Actual. Maintain silent running protocols and stand by for tactical briefing." Within minutes, the faces of Captain Williams from the Morrison and Captain Thompson from the Blackwood appeared on her screen. Both were veteran officers who had served with distinction during the recent border conflicts with the separatist colonies. "Captains, we have a situation. Based on intelligence gathered from a survivor of the Phoenix's mission, we believe the Zephyrians have been working with an unknown hostile force to ambush human vessels." Williams leaned forward, his scarred face grim. "How reliable is this intelligence?" "Very. The source is Ensign Parker from the Defiance. He witnessed the destruction of Captain Morrison's task force and has evidence that the Zephyrians provided targeting data to the attackers." Thompson whistled softly. "If that's true, then every human ship that's followed a Zephyrian escort has been walking into a potential death trap." "That's exactly what I'm thinking. And right now, we have the opportunity to gather more intelligence before they realize we know the truth." Sarah outlined her plan. It was risky, potentially suicidal, but it might be their only chance to learn more about the enemy's capabilities and intentions. "Stevens, what's the status on those energy signatures?" "Still holding position, Commander. But I'm detecting some kind of energy buildup. If I had to guess, I'd say they're preparing weapons systems." "How long before the Defiant arrives with the rest of our task force?" 4 hours at best, ma'am." Sarah made her decision. 4 hours was too long to wait. If they were going to act, it had to be now. "All ships, prepare for tactical jump. We're going to get close enough to gather detailed sensor data on those hidden vessels, then get out before they can respond." The next 20 minutes were spent in careful preparation. Jump coordinates were calculated and recalculated. Sensor packages were optimized for maximum data gathering in minimum time. Weapons systems were charged and ready, though everyone knew that if shooting started, their small task force would be badly outgunned. "All ships report ready, Commander," Stevens announced. "Execute jump." The stars shifted around them as the 3 human vessels dropped out of FTL drive just outside the optimal sensor range of the hidden enemy ships. Immediately, the Valiant sensors began working overtime, gathering every scrap of information they could about the mysterious vessels. What they found was terrifying. "Commander," the science officer called out, his voice tight with disbelief. "These ships are using technology I've never seen before. Their power output readings are off the charts. Each one of these vessels could probably take on our entire home fleet." Sarah felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. "How many are we looking at?" Sensor count shows 23 vessels of various sizes. The smallest is still larger than our heavy cruisers. "The largest?" He paused, checking his readings. "The largest is almost the size of a space station." "What about the Zephyrian vessel?" "It's there, all right. And, Commander, it's not damaged. No hull breaches, no power fluctuations." That distress call was a complete fabrication. Before Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the bridge. The tactical display lit up with new contacts as the hidden enemy fleet began to decloak around them. "They've detected us," Stevens called out. "All vessels are powering weapons." Sarah's mind raced through their options. Running was possible, but it would confirm that they knew about the trap. Fighting was suicide against odds like these. But there was a third option. Rodriguez. Open a channel to the Zephyrian vessel. Channel open, Commander. Sarah took a deep breath, gambling everything on her ability to buy them a few precious minutes. Harmony Singer. This is Commander Chun. We have arrived at your coordinates, but our sensors are detecting numerous unidentified vessels in the area. Are these the ships that attacked you? There was a pause before the familiar musical tones of Zephyrian speech filled the bridge. But when the translation came through, Sarah detected something new in the voice. Something that sounded almost like amusement. Commander Chun, how perceptive of you. Yes, these are indeed the ships that attacked us. Allow me to introduce you to our partners, the hegemony. The pretense was gone now. Sarah could hear the satisfaction in the Zephyrian's voice as he dropped the friendly facade that had fooled humanity for months. You see, Commander, your species has been most useful to us. So eager to trust, so willing to share information. You have made our task much easier than we anticipated. What task? Sarah demanded, though she suspected she already knew the answer. The systematic elimination of emerging spacefaring species, of course. The galaxy has grown too crowded, Commander. Too many voices demanding representation in the Coalition Council. It was decided that some pruning was necessary. Sarah felt rage building inside her as the implications became clear. You've done this before. To other species. Oh, many times. The pattern is always the same. We make contact, gain their trust, learn their capabilities, and the locations of their homeworlds. Then, the hegemony arrives to clean up the mess. It's really quite efficient. The enemy fleet was closing now, their massive shapes blotting out the stars. Sarah could see weapon ports opening along their hulls, energy building for what would certainly be devastating volleys. You made one mistake, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. Oh, and what might that be? You assumed we'd be easy to kill. Sarah cut the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. Stevens, emergency broadcast to all human frequencies. Priority Alpha. Tell them everything we've learned here. Tell them the Zephyrians are working with the enemy and that more attacks are coming. Transmission sent, Commander. All ships, prepare for combat. We're not going home, but we're going to make them pay for every inch. The Valiant and her escorts turned to face the oncoming enemy fleet. They were outnumbered 20-1, outgunned by factors Sarah didn't want to calculate. But they were human, and humans had a long history of fighting against impossible odds. Stevens, target the largest enemy vessel. I want everything we have on that target. Aye, Commander. All weapons locked on. The enemy opened fire first. Brilliant streams of energy lanced out from the hegemony ships, striking the human vessels with devastating force. The Morrison's shields collapsed immediately, and secondary explosions bloomed along her hull. But Captain Williams kept his ship in the fight, returning fire with everything he had. The Blackwood lasted 30 seconds longer before a direct hit to her reactor compartment turned her into an expanding ball of plasma and debris. Captain Thompson's final transmission was a defiant for humanity that echoed across the tactical networks. The Valiant shuddered under repeated impacts, her shields fluctuating wildly as they absorbed impossible amounts of energy. Sarah watched her ship dying around her and felt a strange sense of peace. They had failed to escape, failed to bring detailed intelligence back to Earth. But their emergency transmission had been sent. Someone would receive the warning. Commander, Stevens called out through the smoke filling the bridge. We've lost main power. Weapons are down. Sarah looked at the tactical display, where the enemy fleet was moving into position for the killing blow. The Zephyrian vessel hung back, observing the slaughter with what she imagined was cold satisfaction. All hands, this is the commander. It has been an honor serving with you. She closed her eyes and waited for the end. But instead of the final devastating impact, she heard Stevens gasp in surprise. Commander, new contacts dropping out of FTL. It's the Defiant and the rest of our task force. Sarah's eyes snapped open to see Admiral Harrison's heavy cruiser and 6 escort vessels materializing in the battle zone. Immediately, the newcomers opened fire on the hegemony fleet with everything they had. Admiral Harrison, to all ships, came the familiar voice over the communication system. I received your transmission, Commander Chin. Thomas, show these bastards what happens when you mess with humanity. The tide of battle shifted as fresh human ships entered the fray. The hegemony vessels, caught off guard by the sudden arrival of reinforcements, began to maneuver defensively. For a moment, Sarah allowed herself to hope. But the hope was short-lived. Even with reinforcements, the humans were still badly outnumbered. And, worse, the enemy was beginning to coordinate their response. The hegemony ships moved with precision that spoke of centuries of experience in space combat. Commander, Rodriguez called out weakly from his damaged console. I'm receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Priority 1. Put it through. The voice that emerged from the speakers was Admiral Reyes, the head of Earth's Space Defense Forces. All vessels, this is Earth Command. We have received your intelligence reports and are implementing Emergency Protocol 7. All human ships are to withdraw from alien space immediately. Emergency Protocol 7. Sarah had hoped never to hear those words. It meant that Earth considered humanity to be under immediate threat of extinction. Every human vessel, every colony, every outpost would be recalled to defend the home system. But it also meant something else. Humanity was going to fight. Not with the naive optimism that had characterized their first steps into the galaxy, but with the cold determination that had carried them through every existential threat they had ever faced. The age of exploration was over. The age of war had begun. Earth's moon had been transformed into a fortress. Where once Luna Station had served as a peaceful gateway to the stars, massive weapon platforms now bristled from every crater and mountain range. Admiral Elena Reyes stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the lunar surface, watching tactical displays that showed the most desperate gamble in human history. 3 months had passed since Commander Chen's warning reached Earth. 3 months of frantic preparation as humanity abandoned its scattered colonies and pulled every ship, every resource, every person back to the Sol system. The recall had been chaotic, desperate, and incomplete. 17 human settlements had been overrun before their populations could be evacuated. The agricultural colony on Kepler 442b had simply gone silent, its fate unknown but presumed grim. Admiral, called Colonel Martinez from the intelligence station. We're receiving updated reports from the outer sensor networks. Reyes nodded, her weathered face showing the strain of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. Put it on the main display. The holographic projection showed the solar system as humanity had never seen it before. Every asteroid had been weaponized, every orbital platform reinforced and armed. The belt between Mars and Jupiter had become a deadly maze of automated defense stations, each one capable of destroying a ship the size of a battlecruiser. But it might not be enough. Estimated enemy strength? Reyes asked. Long-range sensors indicate a fleet of approximately 300 vessels approaching from multiple vectors. ETA to the outer system perimeter is 18 hours. 300 ships. The combined human fleet, including every cargo hauler that could mount a weapon and every civilian vessel that could carry a missile, numbered just over 400 ships. But the enemy vessels were larger, more advanced, and crewed by species that had been fighting wars while humanity was still learning to make fire. What about the Zephyrian embassy on Luna Station? Martinez consulted his datapad, still demanding to know why they've been confined to their quarters. They're claiming diplomatic immunity and insisting this is all a misunderstanding. Reyes allowed herself a bitter smile. The Zephyrian delegation had been on Luna Station when the recall order was issued. Their panicked reactions when human security forces had surrounded their compound had been almost comical. They had gone from arrogant demands to desperate pleas in a matter of minutes. Any word from the interrogation teams? Ambassador Harmony Voice is still maintaining that the attacks were conducted by a rogue faction within the coalition. Claims the hegemony has been acting without authorization. And do we believe that? Martinez shook his head. Intelligence analysis suggests it's a cover story. The coordination between Zephyrian vessels and hegemony forces was too precise to be coincidental. Besides, we've detected Zephyrian technology signatures on several of the enemy ships. Reyes turned back to the tactical display, where red dots representing the approaching enemy fleet crept steadily closer to humanity's last stand. Each dot represented enough firepower to level a city, enough alien hatred to exterminate an entire species. Colonel, bring me the latest reports from the research divisions. I want to know if our scientists have learned anything useful from the captured Zephyrian technology. The reports made for grim reading. Human scientists have been working around the clock to reverse engineer alien technology, but the gap between human and alien science was measured in centuries, not years. The energy weapons that the hegemony employed operated on principles that human physics barely recognized. The cloaking devices that made their ships invisible used exotic matter configurations that Earth's most advanced laboratories couldn't even theorize about, let alone reproduce. But there had been some progress. Analysis of debris from the battles in the Kepler sector had revealed that the alien ships relied heavily on centralized computer networks for coordination. More importantly, those networks appeared to use quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication across vast distances. Admiral Dr. Sarah Kim, the head of the Emergency Research Project, approached with a tablet in her hands. We've had a breakthrough with the quantum communication protocols. Reyes looked up with interest. Dr. Kim had been working with a team of the brightest minds humanity could assemble, racing against time to find some weakness in alien technology. What kind of breakthrough? We can't replicate their quantum communication system, but we've figured out how to disrupt it. If we can get close enough to their command vessels, we can inject a virus into their network that should cascade through their entire fleet. How close is close enough? Dr. Kim's expression was grim. Within 200 kilometers. And we need to maintain the connection for at least 90 seconds while the virus propagates. Reyes felt her heart sink. 200 kilometers was point-blank range in space combat terms. Any human ship that got that close to an enemy fleet would be destroyed within seconds. What would happen if the virus worked? Complete system failure across their entire network. Navigation, weapons, life support, everything would shut down simultaneously. It was a desperate plan, but it might be humanity's only chance. Reyes made her decision. Doctor, how many ships would need to carry this virus weapon? Just one, Admiral. But it has to be a ship with advanced computer systems and enough processing power to maintain the quantum link. Reyes nodded slowly. She already knew which ship she would choose. The UES Prometheus was humanity's newest and most advanced vessel, a prototype heavy cruiser that incorporated every lesson learned from decades of space warfare. More importantly, it was equipped with experimental AI systems that might be capable of executing such a complex mission. And its captain was someone Reyes trusted absolutely. Gimme Captain Chun. Sarah Chun had been promoted after her actions in the Kepler sector, though the promotion felt hollow given the circumstances. She had lost most of her crew, watched her friends die, and been forced to abandon dozens of human colonies to their fate. But she had also provided humanity with its first real intelligence about the enemy, and Admiral Reyes needed officers who understood what they were facing. Admiral, Sarah said as she entered the command center. She looked older than her 35 years, her dark hair now streaked with premature gray from the stress of the last few months. Captain, I have a mission for you. It's likely to be one way. Sarah's expression didn't change. She had been expecting this conversation ever since her promotion. What do you need me to do? Reyes explained the plan in detail, watching Sarah's face for any sign of hesitation. There was none. When she finished, Sarah was quiet for a moment, then nodded. I'll need volunteers for the crew. This isn't the kind of mission you can order someone to undertake. Granted, take whoever you need. Within 6 hours, the Prometheus had a full crew of volunteers. Many were survivors from the Kepler sector battles, men and women who had watched their friends die and wanted revenge. Others were simply the best humanity had to offer, people who understood that their sacrifice might save their species. Ensign Parker, now fully recovered from his ordeal, was among the volunteers. He had requested assignment to the Prometheus specifically, claiming he had unfinished business with the Zephyrians. The enemy fleet reached the outer system perimeter exactly on schedule. The first wave consisted of 50 ships, massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the human fleet. They proceeded methodically through the asteroid belt, destroying defense platforms with casual efficiency. The human fleet met them at the orbit of Mars. The battle was unlike anything in human history. Energy weapons that could slice through a mountain turned space into a deadly light show. Human ships, smaller and more maneuverable, darted between the alien dreadnoughts like angry wasps, striking where they could and running before the enemy could respond effectively. But the aliens learned quickly. After losing a dozen ships to human hit-and-run tactics, they began deploying smaller escort vessels that could match human ship speeds. The tide of battle started to turn against the defenders. Admiral, Colonel Martinez called out urgently. The Prometheus is requesting permission to begin her attack run. Reyes watched the tactical display, where the human fleet was being steadily pushed back toward Earth's orbit. They had inflicted casualties on the enemy, but not nearly enough. It was time for the desperate gamble. Tell Captain Shun she is cleared for Operation Lazarus. May God be with her. The Prometheus broke away from the main fleet, accelerating at maximum burn toward the center of the enemy formation. Her mission was to reach the largest hegemony vessel, a massive ship that appeared to be coordinating the entire attack. Sarah watched the enemy fleet grow larger on her view screen as the Prometheus raced toward what was almost certainly her doom. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, each person focused on their assigned tasks. They all knew they were probably going to die, but they also knew that their deaths might save everyone they had ever loved. Captain Lieutenant Rodriguez called out from the communication station. He had also volunteered for the mission, claiming he couldn't let his former commander face this alone. We're receiving a transmission from the enemy flagship. Put it through. The voice that emerged from the speakers was not the musical tones of a Zephyrian, but something deeper, more alien. The translation system struggled with the syntax, producing words that felt wrong in human mouths. Human vessel, you approach your destruction. Turn back now, and your species will be permitted to serve the hegemony as slaves. Continue your approach, and you will be completely eradicated. Sarah keyed her response without hesitation. This is Captain Shun of the United Earth ship Prometheus. We don't negotiate with genocidal maniacs. Go to hell. The response was immediate. Every enemy ship within range opened fire on the Prometheus simultaneously. The ship's shields flared and died under the concentrated barrage, and hull plating began to peel away under the intense energy bombardment. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12 called out the damage control officer. We've lost main engines. Running on maneuvering thrusters only. How far to the target? 800 kilometers and closing. Not close enough. At their current rate of deceleration, they would be destroyed long before reaching the 200-kilometer threshold needed for the virus weapon. Sarah made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life, however long that might be. All hands abandon ship. This is the captain. Get to the escape pods immediately. Captain, Rodriguez protested. We can't abandon the mission. I'm not abandoning it. I'm completing it. Sarah's fingers flew across her console, transferring all command functions to her personal station. The AI can pilot the ship the rest of the way, but someone needs to maintain the quantum link manually. That's going to be me. One by one, her crew reluctantly made their way to the escape pods. Rodriguez was the last to leave, pausing at the bridge entrance. It's been an honor, Captain. The honor was mine, Lieutenant. Now go. That's an order. Alone on the bridge of the dying Prometheus, Sarah watched the distance to the enemy flagship continue to decrease. 600 kilometers. 500. 400. The ship was falling apart around her, atmosphere venting from dozens of hull breaches, power systems failing one by one. At 300 kilometers, the main computer finally died. Sarah switched to manual control, her hands steady on the navigation console, despite the chaos surrounding her. 250 kilometers. 220. The enemy had stopped firing, apparently convinced that the crippled human ship posed no threat. Sarah smiled grimly as she reached the 200-kilometer mark and activated the virus weapon. The quantum link established itself immediately, the alien network welcoming what it perceived as a routine data exchange. The virus, designed by Earth's best programmers and enhanced with captured alien code, began its work immediately. Sarah held the connection for 93 seconds, her hands cramping from the strain of maintaining manual control, while alien weapons began firing again. At 94 seconds, a plasma bolt punched through the bridge, and Captain Sarah Chun died knowing that humanity's last desperate gamble had succeeded. Across the hegemony fleet, ships began shutting down as their computer networks failed catastrophically. Navigation systems died, weapons powered down, life support began to fail. In the space of 5 minutes, the most advanced military fleet in the galaxy had been reduced to helpless hulks drifting in space. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The human fleet had been reduced to fewer than 100 operational vessels. Earth itself had taken hits from long-range bombardment before the enemy ships went dark. And somewhere in the depths of space, more enemy fleets were surely already on their way. Humanity had won this battle, but the war was far from over. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Sol, and the solar system bore little resemblance to the peaceful neighborhood where humanity had once dreamed of greeting alien visitors. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid had been transformed into a fortress. The space between worlds bristled with weapons platforms, sensor networks, and automated defense systems that would make approaching Earth a nightmare for any hostile force. Admiral Elena Reyes stood in the war room buried deep beneath the surface of Ceres, watching holographic displays that showed the current state of humanity's desperate struggle for survival. Around her, dozens of officers worked at their stations, coordinating the defense of a species that refused to go quietly into extinction. Admiral, Captain Morrison called out from the intelligence station. He was one of the few survivors from the original Kepler sector engagement, promoted to fill the gaps left by too many dead heroes. We're receiving reports from the Outer System Scouts. Reyes nodded, though she suspected she already knew what the reports would contain. For 5 years, humanity had been playing a deadly game of hide and seek with the hegemony. Small human fleets would strike at isolated alien outposts, capture what technology they could, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. It was guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale, and somehow, impossibly, it was working. What's the word from Task Force Prometheus? They hit the mining station in the Tau Ceti system 3 days ago. Minimal casualties, and they managed to capture an intact data core. The science teams are analyzing it now. The success of the human raids have been built on lessons learned from that first devastating encounter. Humanity could never match the aliens in terms of raw firepower or advanced technology, but humans had advantages that their enemies hadn't anticipated. They were unpredictable, ruthless when necessary, and capable of innovation under pressure that bordered on the impossible. More importantly, they had learned to use the aliens' own technology against them. Every disabled ship, every captured data core, every piece of alien equipment had been reverse engineered by human scientists working around the clock. The quantum communication virus that had saved Earth had been just the beginning. Any word from the diplomatic missions? Captain Morrison's expression darkened. The Altarians are still refusing to meet with our ambassadors. Same with the Centauri Federation. As far as most of the galaxy is concerned, we're a rogue species that needs to be eliminated. That was the cruelest irony of all. The Zephyrians have been very effective at spreading their version of events throughout known space. According to them, humanity was a violent, primitive species that had attacked peaceful trading vessels without provocation. The fact that human ships were now conducting raids throughout alien space seemed to confirm their propaganda. But there had been some successes. A handful of species had listened to humanity's side of the story, and a few had even provided covert assistance. The Corellians, an insectoid race that had their own conflicts with the hegemony, had secretly provided intelligence about alien fleet movements. The crystalline beings of Proxima had shared technological insights that had helped humanity develop better shield systems. Admiral, Dr. Sarah Kim's voice cut through the background noise of the command center. We've completed analysis of the Tau Ceti data core. You need to see this. Reyes followed Dr. Kim to the analysis lab, where a team of xenolinguists and computer specialists had been working to decrypt the captured alien data. What they had found was both horrifying and encouraging. The good news, Dr. Kim began, is that our raids are having a significant impact. According to this data, the hegemony has lost over 40% of their outer system installations to human attacks. They're being forced to consolidate their forces to defend critical positions. And the bad news? They're not just defending. They're planning something called the Final Solution Protocol. From what we can translate, it involves sterilizing every system that has had human contact, not just conquering them or enslaving the populations. Complete biological extermination. Reyes felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. How many systems are we talking about? At least 200, including every system where humans established colonies, every system they traded in, and every system they even sent exploration probes to. The implications were staggering. The hegemony wasn't just planning to eliminate humanity. They were planning to exterminate every trace of human presence from the galaxy, along with any alien species that had come into contact with human explorers. When are they planning to implement this protocol? Dr. Kim consulted Herdatapat. The timetable suggests they're still several months away from full implementation. But, Admiral, there's something else. Something that might change everything. She led Reyes to another workstation, where a detailed star map showed the current disposition of known alien forces. But there was something different about this map, something that made Reyes lean forward with sudden interest. According to the captured data, the hegemony isn't as unified as they've led everyone to believe. There are at least 3 major factions within their government, and they're not in agreement about how to handle the human problem. What kind of disagreement? One faction, led by someone called the Prime Executor, wants immediate implementation of the final solution. They view humans as an existential threat that needs to be eliminated as quickly as possible. Reyes nodded. She could understand that perspective, even if she disagreed with it. Humanity's unexpected resistance had probably shocked alien leaders who had grown accustomed to easy victories against primitive species. The second faction believes that humans could be useful as slaves or soldiers if properly controlled. They want to capture human worlds intact and use the populations for their own purposes. And the third faction? Dr. Kim's expression grew thoughtful. The third faction is the most interesting. They're arguing that humanity represents something unprecedented, a species that managed to reverse engineer alien technology in a matter of months, develop new tactical doctrines overnight, and turn the galaxy's most advanced military force into a series of guerrilla battlefields. They want to study us. More than that, according to these files, some alien leaders are starting to question whether the hegemony's expansion policies are sustainable. They're wondering if perhaps it's time to consider coexistence rather than conquest. It was the first genuinely hopeful intelligence Reyes had received in 5 years. The possibility that not all aliens wanted humanity extinct opened up strategic options that hadn't existed before. Can we establish contact with this third faction? That's the tricky part. The factional lines don't follow species boundaries. There are Zephyrians, hegemony members, and coalition species represented in all 3 factions. And they're all deeply embedded within existing power structures. Before Reyes could respond, Alarms began sounding throughout the command center. She and Dr. Kim rushed back to the main tactical station, where Captain Morrison was coordinating responses to what appeared to be a massive enemy offensive. Admiral, we're receiving reports from across the outer system. Multiple hegemony fleets are moving toward human positions simultaneously. This isn't a raid or a probing attack. This looks like the beginning of a major offensive. Reyes studied the tactical displays, where red icons representing enemy fleets were converging on human positions from multiple directions. The scale of the attack was unlike anything they had faced since the Battle of Seoul. Force estimates at least 800 vessels in the initial wave. More following behind. Admiral, they're not just targeting military positions. They're moving toward every known human settlement, every hidden base, every asteroid facility we've established. It was the final solution protocol in action. The hegemony had apparently decided that gradual conquest wasn't sufficient. They wanted to eliminate every trace of human presence from the galaxy in one overwhelming assault. Time of contact. First wave reaches the outer perimeter in 6 hours. Full assault begins in 12. Reyes closed her eyes, running through their options. The human fleet had grown significantly over the past 5 years, but it was still outnumbered by at least 2 to 1. Worse, the enemy knew the locations of most human facilities, thanks to information captured during earlier engagements. But humanity had learned a few things during their years as galactic fugitives. They had contingency plans, backup positions, and weapons that the aliens had never seen before. Implement Protocol Omega. All civilian populations to the deep bunkers. All military assets to designated rally points. And activate the Lazarus Network. The Lazarus Network was humanity's ultimate insurance policy, a web of hidden bases, weapon caches, and communication relays scattered throughout hundreds of star systems. Even if Earth fell, even if every known human world was destroyed, the network would ensure that humanity survived somewhere. But, more importantly, it would ensure that the galaxy remembered what had happened here. The final battle began 18 hours later, as hegemony fleets converged on human positions throughout the solar system. This time, there would be no desperate last-minute gambits or technological surprises. This would be a straight fight between two incompatible visions of what the galaxy should become. The aliens fought with the cold efficiency of a machine, their ships moving in perfect coordination as they systematically destroyed human defensive positions. But the humans fought with something the aliens had never encountered before, the fury of a species that refused to accept extinction. Human ships, many of them cobbled together from salvaged alien technology, threw themselves at enemy formations with reckless abandon. Suicide runs that took out alien dreadnoughts. Ramming attacks that turned human corvettes into guided missiles. Desperate boarding actions that saw human marines fighting with improvised weapons in the corridors of alien ships. The Battle of Seoul had lasted 6 hours. This final engagement stretched across 3 days, as human forces fell back from one defensive line to another, making the aliens pay for every kilometer of space they claimed. On the third day, as alien forces closed in on Earth itself, something unexpected happened. A new fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system, but these ships weren't hegemony vessels. They belonged to the Corellian hive mind, the Proximan Crystal Collective, and dozens of other species that had been secretly supporting humanity's resistance. Admiral, Captain Morrison called out, his voice filled with amazement. We're receiving transmissions from the newcomers. They're offering military assistance. The aliens who had come to humanity's aid weren't particularly powerful individually. Most of their species had been conquered or marginalized by the hegemony long ago. But, together, they represented something the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. A coalition of species willing to fight for their freedom. The tide of battle shifted as hundreds of alien vessels engaged the hegemony forces. These weren't the advanced dreadnoughts that had terrorized human space, but they were crewed by beings who understood what defeat meant. Extinction, slavery, the complete erasure of everything they had ever been. In the end, It wasn't superior technology or brilliant tactics that decided the battle. It was the simple fact that sometimes, when faced with annihilation, different species could find common ground. The hegemony forces, faced with unified resistance from species they had thought broken, began to withdraw. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Earth bore the scars of orbital bombardment that had turned entire continents into radioactive wastelands. Mars was a smoking ruin. The asteroid belt had been so thoroughly mined for military purposes that it barely existed anymore. And throughout the galaxy, the final solution protocol had succeeded in many systems. Dozens of species that had traded with humanity, provided assistance, or simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time had been eliminated entirely. Yet humanity survived, battered, reduced to a fraction of its former numbers, scattered across hidden bases throughout known space, but alive. And, more importantly, they had proven something that the galaxy had forgotten: that civilized species didn't have to accept conquest passively. Admiral Reyes stood in the ruins of what had once been Geneva, watching human and alien engineers working together to rebuild what the war had destroyed. It would take decades, maybe centuries, to repair the damage that had been done. But it would be rebuilt, because the one thing the hegemony had never understood about humanity was that humans were very, very good at surviving. They had evolved on a world that had tried to kill them in every way imaginable, and they had not only survived, but thrived. A few alien warships, no matter how advanced, were just another challenge to overcome. The age of human innocence in the galaxy was over. But the age of human determination had only just begun. In the years that followed, historians would debate whether humanity's entrance into galactic politics had been a triumph or a terror. The humans themselves didn't care about the debate. They were too busy making sure that nothing like the hegemony would ever threaten the freedom of intelligent species again. And in the deep space monitoring stations that humanity established throughout the galaxy, operators continued to listen for distress calls from species in need of assistance. Because if there was one thing humanity had learned from their first contact with the galaxy, it was that sometimes the best way to make friends was to show up when someone needed help, even if you had to fight a war to prove you were worth helping.